Thinks she even knows which end of the rifle to hold," whispered recruit Castellanos to his bunkmate as Kira Thorne struggled through her third attempt at disassembling the weapon. The other recruits gathered around the armory table snickered quietly, their eyes tracking every fumbling movement as bolts and springs scattered across the metal surface. Petty Officer Valdez approached her station with clipboard in hand, his expression already preparing for disappointment. "You understand that weapons proficiency is not optional here, Recruit Thorne." He tapped his pen against the board. 78% of candidates who fail this basic task wash out within the first month. The morning sun streamed through the barracks windows, casting harsh shadows across the concrete floor where 32 recruits stood at attention for morning inspection. Salt air from the nearby harbor mixed with the scent of cleaning solution and pressed uniforms, creating the distinctive atmosphere that marked every Navy training facility. Kira stood in the back row, her slight frame barely filling out the crisp dress blues that seemed designed for broader shoulders and taller frames. "She gonna cry when Chief gets here?" muttered Recruit Morrison from 2 positions over, loud enough for half the formation to hear. His comment drew quiet chuckles from the surrounding recruits, their faces carefully neutral to avoid detection by the roving petty officers. Morrison had been the loudest voice questioning her presence since day one, his commentary providing entertainment for others who shared his skepticism but lacked his boldness to voice it. The inspection protocol demanded absolute stillness, but Kira could feel the weight of disapproving stares from every direction. Her hands remained locked at her sides despite the urge to adjust the collar that felt too loose around her neck, the uniform tailored for a different body type entirely. The fabric pulled awkwardly across her shoulders, emphasizing rather than concealing her smaller stature among the sea of broader, more traditionally military physiques. Before we dive into this story, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you have military families in your area who understand the pressure of proving yourself in this environment. Petty Officer Valdez moved through the ranks with practiced efficiency, his inspection routine polished through years of evaluating recruits who arrived with varying degrees of preparation and commitment. When he reached Kira's position, his pace slowed noticeably. The silence stretched as he examined her uniform with particular attention, his eyes noting every detail that might indicate insufficient preparation or lack of military bearing. "Your belt buckle is off-center by approximately 1/4 inch," he announced, his voice carrying across the formation. His comment prompted several recruits to suppress smiles, their satisfaction evident despite their attempts at maintaining military composure. Attention to detail separates successful sailors from those who find themselves reassigned to civilian life, Recruit Thorne. The correction stung more than the public nature of the criticism. Kira had spent 45 minutes that morning ensuring every aspect of her uniform met regulation standards, checking and rechecking each element against the detailed requirements posted in the barracks. Yet somehow the standards that seemed achievable in private became impossible to maintain under the scrutiny of formal inspection. Chief Warrant Officer Hassan entered the barracks with a purposeful stride that marked senior enlisted personnel, his presence immediately commanding absolute attention from every recruit in formation. His reputation preceded him through whispered conversations and cautionary tales shared by earlier training companies. Hassan had served 3 combat deployments and carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had proven his worth under conditions far more demanding than basic training. The announcement that SEAL Commander Torres would be conducting a special inspection sent ripples of nervous energy through the formation. Torres represented the pinnacle of naval special operations, a living legend whose achievements had become the subject of countless stories throughout the training command. For most recruits, the visit represented an opportunity to impress one of the military's most elite operators. For Kira, the announcement triggered a different response entirely. Her fingers unconsciously moved toward her left shoulder, where beneath the perfectly pressed uniform fabric lay a small tattoo that had remained hidden since her arrival at the training facility. The design was simple but unmistakable to those who understood its significance. a marking that connected her to a legacy she had never spoken about to her fellow recruits. She probably thinks this is summer camp. Morrison continued his commentary as the formation waited for the visiting commander. His words found ready agreement among nearby recruits who had already formed their opinions about her likelihood of success. The betting pool that had started as casual entertainment had grown into a serious wager, with most participants convinced her departure was inevitable rather than merely possible. The barracks door opened again, and Commander Torres stepped inside. Commander Torres entered the barracks with the measured gait of someone accustomed to command, his sealed trident gleaming against the navy blue of his dress uniform. Every recruit in the formation held their breath as his presence filled the space, bringing with it an aura of proven capability that separated him from every other authority figure they had encountered during training. His eyes swept across the formation with a methodical assessment of someone trained to evaluate threats and assets in seconds. Kira felt her pulse quicken as Torres began his inspection at the front of the formation, working his way systematically through each row. The tattoo beneath her uniform seemed to burn against her skin, its presence a constant reminder of the secret she had carried since arriving at the training facility. She had chosen this path deliberately, wanting to prove herself without the weight of expectations or assumptions that came with her family history. "Bet she faints when he gets to her," whispered Recruit Jenkins from the next row, his voice barely audible but clear enough for several nearby recruits to hear. His comment drew subtle nods of agreement from others who had already witnessed her struggles during the morning's weapons training. The confidence in his prediction reflected the general consensus among her peers about her ability to handle pressure. Torres moved through the first row with practiced efficiency, his inspection revealing nothing that warranted comment or correction. Each recruit received the same level of scrutiny, his trained eye noting details that escaped less experienced observers. When he reached the second row, his pace remained steady, but Kira noticed the way his gaze lingered slightly longer on each face, as if cataloging information for future reference. The weapons training incident from earlier still echoed in whispered conversations throughout the formation. Kira's fumbling with the rifle disassembly had provided entertainment for recruits who found validation in other struggles. Morrison had been particularly vocal about her performance, his commentary drawing laughs from those who shared his skepticism about her place in their training company. "She probably never held a weapon before coming here," Castellanos murmured to his neighbor, his assessment delivered with the authority of someone who considered himself far more qualified. His family's military background gave him confidence in his own abilities while highlighting what he perceived as her obvious deficiencies. The comparisons served to reinforce his position within the informal hierarchy that had developed among the recruits. Torres completed his inspection of the second row and moved toward the third, bringing him closer to Kira's position in the formation. Her breathing remained controlled, but she could feel perspiration forming beneath her uniform despite the morning's cool temperature. The weight of concealment pressed against her consciousness, making her hyper-aware of every movement and expression that might reveal more than she intended. Petty Officer Valdez maintained his position at the front of the formation, his clipboard ready to document any deficiencies Torres might identify during his inspection. The morning's criticism about her belt buckle still stung, but Kira had managed to make the adjustment during the brief interval before Torres arrived. Small victories had become increasingly important as larger successes remain elusive. The salt air from the harbor carried the distant sounds of naval operations, ships moving through channels marked by generations of military service. Training facilities like this one had processed thousands of recruits over decades, transforming civilians into sailors through systematic challenges designed to reveal character under pressure. For most recruits, the process represented their first real test of commitment to something larger than themselves. Torres reached the fourth row, his inspection continuing with the same methodical approach that had marked his progress through the formation. Kira could see his profile as he examined each recruit, noting the way his eyes captured details that others might miss. His reputation had been built through years of operations where attention to such details meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Wonder if she knows what those ribbons mean? Morrison continued his running commentary, gesturing subtly toward Torres' chest full of decorations. His question revealed both genuine curiosity and underlying skepticism about her military knowledge. The assumption that she lacked basic understanding of military culture had become a recurring theme in his observations about her fitness for naval service. The morning inspection routine had become a daily test of endurance for Kira, each day bringing new opportunities for public criticism and private doubt. Her uniform always met regulation standards, but somehow other recruits managed to achieve a level of military bearing that continued to elude her efforts. The difference seemed to lie not in technical compliance, but in some indefinable quality that marked natural military presence. Torres completed the 4th row and stepped toward the 5th, bringing him within 3 positions of Kira's location in the formation. Her heart rate increased despite her efforts to maintain the controlled breathing techniques she had learned years before in circumstances far removed from this training environment. The irony of her situation was not lost on her, hiding capabilities while appearing to lack them entirely. Chief Hassan observed Torres' progress with professional interest, his own experience allowing him to appreciate the commander's inspection technique. The visit represented an opportunity for the training company to demonstrate their development under his guidance, but it also created pressure to ensure no deficiencies reflected poorly on his leadership. Every recruit's performance became a reflection of the instruction they had received. "She's definitely gonna wash out after this," predicted Jenkins with quiet confidence, his assessment based on 3 weeks of observing her struggles with various training requirements. His prediction found ready agreement among nearby recruits who had formed similar conclusions about her staying power. The betting pool had reflected these opinions, with odds heavily favoring her departure before graduation. Torres stepped into the 5th row, beginning his inspection of the recruits immediately adjacent to Kira's position. She could feel the intensity of his presence as he moved closer, his trained attention focused on details that might escape less experienced observers. The moment of truth approached with each step he took in her direction, bringing inevitable discovery of the secret she had maintained since arriving at the facility. Torres approached the recruit directly beside Kira, his inspection methodical and thorough as he examined every detail of the young man's uniform and military bearing. The recruit stood frozen at attention, his breathing carefully controlled as the legendary SEAL commander evaluated his presentation. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool morning air, the pressure of performing under such scrutiny evident in his rigid posture. "She probably doesn't even know what a SEAL is," whispered recruit Davidson from behind Kira, his voice barely audible but carrying enough volume for several nearby recruits to catch his words. His comment drew subtle smirks from those within earshot, their amusement carefully hidden behind the mask of military discipline required during formal inspection. The assumption that she lacked basic military knowledge had become a common thread in their ongoing assessment of her qualifications. Kira felt the familiar weight of judgment pressing down on her as Torres completed his examination of her neighbor and took the single step that brought him directly in front of her position. His presence filled her field of vision, the ribbons and decorations on his chest representing achievements earned through years of the most demanding military service imaginable. Each colored ribbon told a story of operations conducted in conditions that tested the limits of human endurance and capability. The tattoo beneath her uniform seemed to pulse with significance as Torres began his inspection, his trained eyes noting every detail of her appearance with the same intensity he had applied to every other recruit in the formation. She had positioned the uniform carefully that morning, ensuring the fabric lay flat against her shoulder where the small but meaningful design remained hidden from casual observation. Torres' eyes moved systematically from her cover to her collar, examining the alignment and condition of each uniform component with professional thoroughness. His inspection technique reflected years of experience evaluating personnel under conditions where attention to detail could determine mission success or failure. Every crease, every button, every insignia received the same level of scrutiny that had become second nature through decades of military service. "Bet $20 she cracks before he finishes," Morrison murmured to Castellanos, his prediction delivered with the confidence of someone who had already witnessed multiple examples of her inability to handle pressure. The betting that had started as casual entertainment had evolved into serious wagering, with most participants convinced that her breaking point was inevitable rather than merely possible. The morning sun had climbed higher, casting different shadows across the barracks floor and changing the quality of light that illuminated the inspection. Torres continued his examination with patient thoroughness, his expression revealing nothing about his assessment of her military bearing or uniform compliance. The silence stretched as he noted details that might escape less experienced observers. Kira maintained her position at attention despite the growing tension that threatened to break her composure. Years of training in environments far removed from this military setting had taught her techniques for managing stress and maintaining focus under pressure. The irony of applying those skills while concealing their source added another layer of complexity to her current situation. Chief Hassan watched Torres' progress with professional interest, his own experience allowing him to appreciate the commander's inspection methodology. The visit represented an opportunity to showcase the training company's development, but it also created pressure to ensure no deficiencies reflected poorly on the instruction provided. Every recruit's performance became a measure of the leadership they had received. Torres' examination reached her left shoulder, where the uniform fabric lay smooth against her skin. His eyes moved across the area with the same systematic attention he had applied to every other aspect of her appearance. For a moment, his gaze seemed to linger, as if detecting some subtle irregularity that warranted closer examination. "She's definitely hiding something," observed Jenkins quietly, his comment reflecting a growing sense among the recruits that her struggles stemmed from more than simple inexperience. The theory that she had misrepresented her background or qualifications had gained traction among those seeking explanations for her apparent unsuitability for military service. The inspection continued as Torres' attention moved to her ribbons and insignia, checking their placement against regulation standards with the precision that marked all aspects of his professional conduct. His fingers remained at his sides, but his eyes captured every detail with the thoroughness of someone trained to identify discrepancies that others might overlook. Kira felt perspiration forming beneath her uniform despite her efforts to maintain composure. The weight of concealment had grown heavier with each passing day at the training facility, the constant need to appear less capable than her actual background conflicting with every instinct developed through years of preparation. The balance between hiding abilities and meeting minimum standards required constant calculation. "Probably never been away from home before," Castellanos added his assessment to the ongoing commentary, his words reflecting the general consensus that she represented everything that military training was designed to eliminate. His confidence in this judgment stemmed from 3 weeks of observing what he interpreted as clear evidence of her unsuitability for naval service. Torres completed his examination of her insignia and stepped back slightly, his inspection apparently finished. His expression remained neutral, revealing nothing about his conclusions regarding her military bearing or uniform compliance. The moment passed without comment or correction, leaving her status unchanged in the eyes of her fellow recruits who had anticipated some form of public criticism. The commander moved to the next recruit in the formation, continuing his systematic progression through the remaining personnel. Kira remained at attention, her relief at surviving the inspection tempered by awareness that her fellow recruits had noted the lack of criticism with surprise. Their expectations of her failure had become so ingrained that her success in meeting basic standards registered as an anomaly requiring explanation. Morrison exchanged glances with Castellanos, their silent communication reflecting shared disappointment that the inspection had not provided the entertainment they had anticipated. The betting pool would continue unchanged, with most participants maintaining their predictions about her eventual departure. One successful inspection could not overcome weeks of observed struggles with various training requirements. Torres reached the final recruit in the row, his inspection maintaining the same level of thoroughness that had marked his evaluation of every other member of the formation. The systematic nature of his approach had ensured equal treatment regardless of his personal assessment of each individual's potential for success in naval service. Torres completed his inspection of the final recruit and stepped back to address the formation as a whole, his presence commanding absolute attention from every member of the training company. The systematic examination had revealed no major deficiencies, but his trained eye had cataloged numerous details that would factor into his overall assessment of the unit's readiness and development under Chief Hassan's guidance. "Your bearing reflects the quality of instruction you have received here," Torres announced, his voice carrying the authority earned through years of leading elite military operations. The compliment to Chief Hassan was implicit but clear, acknowledging the professional competence evident in the formation's overall presentation. Each recruit stood straighter upon hearing recognition from such a distinguished source. However, Torres continued, his tone shifting to indicate additional observations. Military service demands more than compliance with uniform regulations. The real test of your commitment will come when you face challenges that cannot be overcome through memorization of procedures or attention to superficial details. His words carried weight earned through personal experience with situations where technical knowledge proved insufficient. Kira felt the familiar weight of impending challenge in his statement, recognizing the type of assessment that had marked significant transitions throughout her background. The pattern of escalating tests designed to reveal character under pressure was one she understood from contexts far removed from this training environment. Her fellow recruits heard only the promise of increased difficulty ahead, probably wash out during the first real test. Morrison predicted quietly, his assessment delivered with the confidence of someone who had observed her struggles with basic requirements. His words found ready agreement among nearby recruits who had formed similar conclusions about her staying power based on 3 weeks of accumulated evidence. The betting pool reflected these opinions with odds heavily favoring her departure. Torres dismissed the formation with instructions for the day's training schedule, which included advanced physical conditioning and tactical problem-solving exercises designed to push recruits beyond their comfort zones. The announcement drew mixed reactions ranging from excitement among those eager to prove themselves to apprehension from recruits still struggling with basic requirements. The barracks erupted into controlled activity as 32 recruits prepared for the challenging day ahead. Kira moved toward her footlocker with the same deliberate efficiency that marked all her actions, her movements economical and purposeful despite the appearance of uncertainty that had characterized her public performances during training exercises. "Think she even knows what tactical means," Jenkins commented to his bunkmate while retrieving his field gear, his question reflecting the general assumption that her military vocabulary was limited to terms encountered during the past 3 weeks. The theory that she lacked fundamental understanding of military concepts had become accepted wisdom among recruits seeking explanations for her apparent struggles. The tactical exercises scheduled for the afternoon would involve scenarios designed to test decision-making under pressure, requiring participants to demonstrate leadership capabilities and strategic thinking in addition to physical endurance. For most recruits, these challenges represented their first opportunity to apply theoretical knowledge gained through classroom instruction to practical situations requiring immediate action. Kira understood the true nature of these tests from experience gained in environments where similar principles applied under conditions far more demanding than training scenarios. The challenge lay not in meeting the requirements, but in appearing to struggle appropriately while avoiding performance that might reveal capabilities inconsistent with her carefully maintained image of inadequacy. "She's definitely gonna crack when things get serious," Castellanos predicted while adjusting his field equipment, his assessment based on observed behavior during previous training exercises that had challenged recruits in various ways. His confidence in this prediction stemmed from patterns he had identified in her responses to pressure situations throughout their time together. The weapon's range beckoned in the distance, its targets and firing positions representing the next phase of evaluation that would test marksmanship skills under controlled conditions. For recruits with hunting or competitive shooting backgrounds, the range offered an opportunity to demonstrate existing capabilities. For others, it represented a steep learning curve requiring patience and instruction. Chief Hassan observed the preparation activity with professional satisfaction, noting the efficiency with which his training company responded to direction and organized themselves for challenging exercises. The morning's inspection by Commander Torres had validated his instructional methods, while highlighting areas where continued development remained necessary. Morrison finished securing his gear and turned his attention to observing Kira's preparation, his scrutiny reflecting the entertainment value he found in anticipating her struggles with upcoming challenges. The pattern of public failure followed by private mockery had become a source of group bonding among recruits who found validation in others' difficulties. Bet she never fired a weapon before coming here. Davidson added his assessment to the ongoing commentary, his assumption reflecting the general consensus about her background and preparation for military service. The theory that she represented everything military training was designed to eliminate had gained acceptance among recruits seeking simple explanations for complex situations. The afternoon sun would bring heat that intensified the difficulty of physical challenges, while testing each recruit's ability to maintain performance standards under uncomfortable conditions. Hydration and pacing became critical factors in determining success or failure during exercises designed to push participants beyond their normal limitations. Kira completed her preparation with the same careful attention to detail that marked all her actions, ensuring her equipment met regulation standards while concealing the ease with which she accomplished tasks that challenged other recruits. The balance between competence and apparent struggle required constant calculation and adjustment based on circumstances. Torres departed the barracks with Chief Hassan, their conversation focusing on observations gathered during the morning's inspection and recommendations for continued development of the training company. The commander's assessment would influence future training schedules and individual evaluations that determined each recruit's progression toward graduation. She probably thinks this is summer camp. Morrison concluded his assessment while shouldering his pack, his words summarizing the collective opinion that had formed among recruits who had witnessed her apparent struggles with military requirements. The assumption that she misunderstood the seriousness of their situation had become fundamental to their understanding of her presence in their training company. The formation began moving toward the training areas where afternoon exercises would test their development under Chief Hassan's instruction. Each step carried them closer to challenges designed to reveal character under pressure while separating those capable of meeting military standard from those destined for civilian life. The weapon's range stretched before them under the harsh afternoon sun, its concrete firing positions and steel target frames representing the next phase of evaluation that would test each recruit's marksmanship capabilities under observation. 32 recruits lined up behind a safety barrier, while Chief Hassan delivered instructions for the live-fire exercise that would determine their progression toward advanced training phases. Your performance here will be documented and evaluated, Hassan announced, his clipboard ready to record scores that would influence individual assessments and future training assignments. The emphasis on documentation increased pressure on recruits who understood that poor performance would follow them throughout their military careers. Each shot would be measured against standards that separated acceptable from inadequate. Kira positioned herself at firing station 12, her assigned rifle feeling familiar despite her careful efforts to appear uncertain during weapons handling exercises. The weight and balance of the weapon triggered muscle memory developed through years of training in environments far removed from this military setting. She forced herself to fumble with the safety mechanism while other recruits observed her apparent inexperience. $20 says she doesn't hit the target. Morrison announced loudly enough for nearby recruits to hear his wager, his confidence in her failure reflecting 3 weeks of accumulated evidence supporting his assessment. The betting had evolved from casual entertainment to serious financial speculation, with most participants viewing her struggles as predictable rather than surprising. The firing line stretched across the range with each position marked by concrete barriers designed to contain brass casings and provide protection from ricochets. Afternoon heat radiated from the concrete surfaces, creating shimmer effects that would challenge marksmanship skills already tested by pressure and observation. Wind conditions remained minimal, eliminating one variable that could affect accuracy. Castellanos took position at Station 11, his confidence evident in the efficient way he prepared his weapon and adjusted his stance for optimal shooting position. His family's hunting background had provided years of experience with firearms, giving him advantages that other recruits lacked. The contrast between his competence and Kira's apparent uncertainty provided entertainment for observers. "She probably closes her eyes when she shoots," Jenkins predicted from Station 14, his comment drawing quiet laughter from recruits within earshot who found validation in mocking what they perceived as obvious incompetence. The pattern of public ridicule had become so established that her struggles were anticipated rather than merely observed. Chief Hassan moved along the firing line, checking each recruit's weapon preparation and stance, his experienced eye noting details that would affect accuracy and safety during the live-fire exercise. When he reached Kira's position, his examination took longer than average, reflecting concerns about her demonstrated capabilities during previous training exercises involving weapons handling. "Your grip needs adjustment," Hassan instructed, positioning her hands more securely on the rifle while noting the tension in her posture that suggested nervousness about the upcoming test. His correction was delivered professionally, but carried underlying doubt about her ability to meet minimum marksmanship standards required for progression through training. The target stood at varying distances from 25 to 100 meters, each marked with scoring zones that would determine individual performance ratings. Most recruits would fire at the closest targets initially, advancing to greater distances only after demonstrating basic proficiency. The progressive challenge structure was designed to build confidence while identifying natural marksmen. "Definitely gonna miss everything," Davidson added his prediction to the ongoing commentary, his assessment based on observed behavior during dry-fire exercises where she had appeared confused by basic shooting fundamentals. The assumption that her poor performance would continue had become so ingrained that success seemed impossible rather than merely unlikely. Kira adjusted her stance according to Hassan's guidance, while internally calculating the modifications needed to appear appropriately struggling without completely failing the exercise. The balance between incompetence and minimum standards required precise judgment about how much difficulty to display while still meeting requirements for continued training. Morrison positioned himself at Station 10, where he could observe her performance while managing his own shooting requirements, his entertainment value in her anticipated failure competing with his need to demonstrate personal competence. The dual focus reflected the social dynamics that had developed within the training company over 3 weeks of shared challenges. The range safety officer conducted final checks of all positions, ensuring proper eye and ear protection while verifying that all weapons were pointed downrange in safe directions. His systematic approach reflected years of experience managing live-fire exercises where safety protocols prevented accidents that could end military careers before they began. Hassan raised his hand to signal the beginning of the exercise, his voice carrying clearly across the range as he delivered final instructions about firing procedures and target engagement sequences. The formal nature of his commands increased tension among recruits who understood that their performance will be measured against established standards with little tolerance for excuses. "On my command, you will fire 3 rounds at your assigned target," Hassan announced, his clipboard positioned to record scores that would become part of each recruit's permanent training record. The documentation process added weight to the exercise, transforming what might have been simple practice into evaluation with lasting consequences. Kira settled into her firing position with movements that appeared awkward despite feeling natural, her body assuming the stance that years of training had made automatic. She forced herself to shift uncomfortably while adjusting her sight picture, creating the impression of uncertainty that had characterized all her public performances during military training. She gonna embarrass herself completely, Castellanos predicted confidently, his words reflecting the consensus opinion that had formed among recruits who viewed her presence as evidence of lowered military standards. The theory that she represented everything wrong with modern military recruitment had become accepted wisdom among those seeking explanations for her apparent inadequacy. The wind remained calm across the range, eliminating atmosphere variables that could affect bullet trajectory and accuracy. Clear visibility and optimal lighting conditions created an environment where marksmanship skills will be tested without external factors that might provide excuses for poor performance. Each recruit would face evaluation based purely on individual capability and preparation. Hassan prepared to give the firing command that would begin the exercise, his attention focused on safety procedures while maintaining awareness of each recruit's readiness to engage their assigned targets. The moment approached when weeks of instruction and preparation would be tested through live ammunition and measured results. Ready on the firing line, Hassan commanded, his voice carrying the authority that marked decades of military service and countless hours spent training recruits in weapons proficiency. The range fell silent except for the distant sounds of other training activities and the occasional rustle of equipment as 32 recruits prepared for evaluation that would determine their progression through the naval training program. Kira aligned her sights with deliberate uncertainty, her movements appearing hesitant while her muscle memory automatically found the proper sight picture developed through years of training in far more demanding environments. She forced herself to waver slightly, creating the impression of nervousness that her fellow recruits expected based on 3 weeks of observed struggles with military requirements. "This is going to be painful to watch," Morrison whispered to Castellanos, his prediction delivered with the confidence of someone who had witnessed multiple examples of her apparent incompetence during previous exercises. The entertainment value he found in her anticipated failure had become a source of bonding among recruits who sought validation through other struggles. Hassan raised his arm to signal the beginning of the exercise, his clipboard positioned to document scores that would become permanent parts of each recruit's training record. The formal evaluation process added weight to what might otherwise have been simple marksmanship practice, transforming routine training into assessment with lasting consequences for military careers. "Fire," Hassan commanded, his single word triggering the beginning of an evaluation that would test weeks of instruction and individual preparation under pressure. The crack of rifles echoed across the range as 32 recruits engaged their assigned targets, each shot representing months of anticipation and preparation for this moment of military assessment. Kira squeezed the trigger with careful control, her shot deliberately placed slightly off-center to maintain the appearance of struggling accuracy while still achieving a score sufficient to meet minimum requirements. The balance between failure and adequacy required precise calculation, ensuring her performance remained consistent with expectations while avoiding complete incompetence. The first volley concluded with mixed results across the firing line, some recruits achieving solid hits, while others struggled with accuracy that reflected insufficient preparation or excessive nervousness under evaluation pressure. Hassan moved along the line, checking targets through binoculars, his expression revealing professional assessment of each recruit's marksmanship development. "Told you she'd miss," Davidson announced with satisfaction after observing the impact of Kira's shot through the spotting scope at his position, his comment reflecting the general expectation that her performance would validate weeks of accumulated doubt about her military capabilities. The confirmation of predicted failure provided entertainment for those who had invested emotional capital in her struggles. The second round of firing proceeded with similar results. each recruit adjusting their technique based on observation of their initial shot placement, while managing the pressure of documented evaluation. The systematic nature of the exercise created opportunities for improvement, while maintaining standards that separated acceptable from inadequate performance. Kira's second shot landed closer to center, but still within the range of acceptable mediocrity she had calculated would maintain her carefully constructed image of limited capability. The improvement showed responsiveness to instruction while avoiding the level of accuracy that might prompt questions about her background or previous training experience. She might actually hit something by accident, Jenkins observed with surprise, his comment reflecting the low expectations that had become standard among recruits who viewed her presence as evidence of compromised military standards. The possibility that she might meet minimum requirements had not been seriously considered by most observers. Chief Hassan completed his evaluation of the first 2 rounds, his documentation reflecting the range of performance across the training company from excellent marksmanship to barely acceptable accuracy. The distribution of scores provided insight into individual preparation levels, while identifying recruits who would require additional instruction before advancing to more challenging exercises. Final round, Hassan announced, his voice carrying the finality that marked the conclusion of formal evaluation. The last shot would complete each recruit's documented assessment, providing the final data point needed to determine progression through training phases that led toward graduation and fleet assignment. The pressure of concluding evaluation affected different recruits in varying ways, some finding improved focus, while others struggled with increased nervousness that degraded their performance. The psychological component of marksmanship became as important as technical skills, separating those capable of performing under pressure from those who cracked when stakes were highest. Kira prepared for her final shot with the same calculated approach that had marked her entire performance, ensuring her result would fall within the narrow range that met requirements without exceeding expectations. The precision required to maintain this balance demonstrated capabilities far beyond what her apparent struggles suggested to casual observers. Morrison positioned himself to observe her final attempt through the spotting scope, his anticipation of entertaining failure reflecting 3 weeks of accumulated evidence supporting his assessment of her inadequacy. The betting pool had reached significant proportions, with most participants convinced that dramatic failure remained inevitable despite marginal improvement. The afternoon sun had shifted position, creating different lighting conditions that affected sight pictures and target visibility across the firing line. Experienced marksmen adjusted their techniques automatically, while less prepared recruits struggled with variables they had not anticipated during indoor instruction sessions. "Ready," Hassan called, preparing to give the final command that would conclude the marksmanship evaluation and provide the last piece of data needed for individual assessments. The moment carried weight beyond simple target shooting, representing a measure of each recruit's development under military instruction and ability to perform under documented evaluation. "Fire," Hassan commanded for the final time, his word triggering the conclusion of an exercise that had tested weeks of preparation and individual capability under pressure. The echo of rifles across the range marked the end of evaluation that would influence each recruit's progression through training phases leading toward military careers. Kira's final shot impacted the target with carefully calculated accuracy, achieving a score that met minimum standards while maintaining the appearance of struggling competence that had characterized her entire performance. The result satisfied requirements without prompting questions about capabilities that exceeded her carefully maintained image of limited ability. The exercise concluded with Hassan collecting scorecards and conducting final safety checks before allowing recruits to clear their weapons and secure equipment. The documentation process would continue in administrative offices where individual performances would be analyzed and recorded in training records that followed each recruit throughout their military service. The barracks hummed with quiet activity as 32 recruits prepared for the evening's final inspection, their movements reflecting the practiced efficiency developed through 3 weeks of military routine. Uniform preparation had become automatic, each recruit understanding the standards required to avoid public criticism during formation. The day's marksmanship results remained fresh in their minds, providing new material for ongoing assessments of individual capabilities. Barely qualified, Morrison announced while reviewing the posted scores from the afternoon's live-fire exercise, his comment directed toward anyone within earshot who might share his interest in Kira's mediocre performance. The results had confirmed his predictions about her limited capabilities while providing ammunition for continued skepticism about her place in their training company. Kira methodically prepared her uniform for evening inspection, her movements deliberate and careful as she ensured every detail met regulation standards. The routine of military precision had become second nature, though she maintained the appearance of uncertainty that had characterized her public performances throughout training. Each fold and adjustment required the same calculated effort to appear struggling while meeting requirements. The announcement board near the barracks entrance displayed training schedules for the upcoming week, including advanced combat scenarios and leadership exercises designed to test recruits under increasing pressure. The progression toward more challenging requirements would separate those capable of military service from those destined for civilian life, a sorting process that had begun with their arrival. "Think she even understands what those exercises mean?" Castellanos observed while reading the schedule, his question reflecting the general assumption that her military vocabulary remained limited despite 3 weeks of instruction. The theory that she lacked fundamental understanding of military concepts had become accepted wisdom among recruits seeking explanations for her apparent struggles. Chief Hassan entered the barracks to conduct preliminary inspection of uniform preparation, his experienced eye noting details that would affect the evening's formal evaluation. The systematic approach he brought to every aspect of training reflected decades of experience transforming civilians into sailors through progressive challenges designed to reveal character under pressure. Evening inspection served multiple purposes beyond uniform compliance, providing opportunities to assess each recruit's attention to detail and response to military standards under daily pressure. The cumulative effect of repeated evaluations created stress that separated those committed to military service from those seeking easier alternatives. Kira adjusted her collar with the same careful attention she applied to every aspect of her appearance, ensuring the fabric lay properly while concealing the tattoo that remained hidden beneath regulation clothing. The weight of that concealment had grown heavier with each passing day, the constant awareness of hidden significance adding complexity to every interaction. "She definitely hiding something." Jenkins repeated his assessment from earlier observations, his intuition detecting discrepancies between her apparent struggles and subtle indicators that suggested different capabilities. The theory that she had misrepresented her background had gained traction among recruits seeking explanations for inconsistencies in her behavior patterns. The evening light streaming through barracks windows created different shadows and highlights that would affect the inspection process, requiring adjustments in positioning and presentation techniques. Experienced recruits had learned to account for these variables, while others continued to struggle with factors beyond their immediate control. Morrison finished his uniform preparation and turned his attention to observing others, his scrutiny focusing particularly on recruits whose struggles provided entertainment value during the tedious routine of military life. The pattern of seeking validation through others' difficulties had become established social dynamics within the training company. Hassan began his preliminary inspection at the far end of the barracks, his systematic approach ensuring equal attention to every recruit's preparation while noting details that might affect evening evaluation. The professional competence he brought to assessment reflected years of experience identifying potential in unlikely candidates while recognizing inevitable failures. Probably never been held to real standards before, Davidson added his analysis to ongoing discussions about individual backgrounds and preparation levels, his assumption reflecting beliefs about civilian life that had shaped his understanding of military requirements. The contrast between perceived civilian softness and military demands provided framework for understanding training challenges. The barracks clock marked the approaching time for evening formation, its steady ticking creating urgency that affected preparation routines and stress levels throughout the training company. Each minute brought them closer to evaluation that would influence individual standings and progression through phases leading toward graduation. Kira completed her uniform preparation with the same methodical approach that characterized all her actions, her movements economical and purposeful despite maintaining the appearance of uncertainty that had marked her public performances. The balance between competence and struggle required constant calculation and adjustment based on observation. Hassan approached her area of the barracks during his preliminary inspection, his attention focused on details that would affect her performance during formal evaluation. The scrutiny she received had intensified over weeks of training, reflecting concerns about her demonstrated capabilities and commitment to military standards. "Your uniform preparation shows improvement," Hassan acknowledged, his professional assessment noting progress while maintaining expectations for continued development. The recognition represented modest validation, while emphasizing that meeting minimum standards remained the goal rather than exceptional achievement. "Bet she still finds something wrong during real inspection," Morrison predicted quietly, his skepticism reflecting established patterns of expectation that had developed through observing her struggles with various military requirements. The assumption that failure remained inevitable had become fundamental to understanding her presence among them. The preparation period concluded as Hassan completed his preliminary examination of the entire training company, his observations providing insight into individual development, while identifying areas requiring continued attention. The systematic approach ensured equal treatment while maintaining standards that separated acceptable from inadequate performance. "Formation in 5 minutes," Hassan announced, his command triggering final adjustments and preparations throughout the barracks as 32 recruits prepared for evening evaluation. The routine had become automatic, though pressure remained constant due to the documented nature of every assessment and its impact on military careers. Kira made final adjustments to her uniform while managing the familiar weight of concealment that had marked every day since arriving at the training facility. The evening inspection would test her ability to maintain appearance of struggling competence while meeting standards required for continued participation in military training. The evening formation assembled with precision that reflected 3 weeks of intensive training, 32 recruits standing at attention as the sun cast long shadows across the concrete courtyard. The routine had become automatic, each recruit understanding their position and responsibilities during formal inspection protocols that would test their development under Chief Hassan's instruction. Kira took her assigned position in the back row, her uniform meeting regulation standards despite the constant challenge of concealing capabilities while appearing to struggle with basic military requirements. The weight of hidden significance pressed against her consciousness as evening inspection approached, bringing another opportunity for discovery that could transform her carefully maintained anonymity. "She still looks nervous," observed recruit Patterson from the adjacent row, his comment reflecting the general perception that her apparent anxiety stemmed from inadequate preparation rather than more complex concerns. The assumption that her discomfort indicated incompetence had become standard interpretation among recruits who viewed her struggles as predictable rather than surprising. Chief Hassan approached the formation with his characteristic purposeful stride, his clipboard ready to document any deficiencies discovered during evening evaluation. The systematic approach he brought to inspection reflected years of experience assessing recruits under conditions designed to reveal character and commitment through attention to detail and response to pressure. The announcement that Commander Torres would return for a follow-up inspection sent ripples of nervous energy through the formation, his earlier visit having established expectations for performance that exceeded routine evaluation standards. The legendary SEAL commander's presence elevated every aspect of assessment, transforming ordinary inspection into evaluation by one of the military's most elite operators. "Think she's gonna faint again when he shows up?" Morrison whispered to his neighbor, his prediction reflecting established patterns of expectation based on weeks of observing her apparent struggles with authority figures and pressure situations. The entertainment value he found in her anticipated difficulties had become a source of social bonding within the training company. Torres entered the courtyard with a measured confidence that marked his professional bearing, his seal trident catching the evening light as he moved toward the formation. Every recruit straightened imperceptibly upon seeing him, their awareness of his achievements and reputation adding gravity to what might otherwise have been routine evening inspection. Evening inspection will focus on attention to detail and military bearing, Hassan announced, his words carrying additional weight due to Torres' presence as observing authority. The emphasis on fundamentals reflected the understanding that basic competencies formed the foundation for more advanced military capabilities that would be tested in fleet assignments. Kira felt her pulse quicken as Torres began his systematic examination of the formation, starting with the front row and working methodically toward her position in the back. The tattoo beneath her uniform seemed to burn with significance as the moment of potential discovery approached through his steady progression along the ranks. Definitely gonna crack under pressure from a real SEAL, Castellanos predicted confidently, his assessment based on 3 weeks of accumulated evidence supporting his belief in her inevitable failure when faced with genuine military authority. The theory that she represented everything military training was designed to eliminate had become accepted wisdom among skeptical observers. Torres moved through the front ranks with the same thorough attention he had demonstrated during morning inspection, his trained eye noting details that separated military bearing from civilian approximation. Each recruit received equal scrutiny, but his assessment carried weight that would influence future training opportunities and career progression. The evening light created different conditions for inspection than morning evaluation, casting shadows that changed the visibility of uniform details while testing each recruit's ability to maintain standards under varying circumstances. The atmospheric conditions added complexity to assessment while demonstrating adaptability required for military service. She probably doesn't even know who he is, Jenkins added his contribution to ongoing commentary, his assumption reflecting the general belief that her military knowledge remained limited despite weeks of instruction and exposure to naval traditions. The theory that she lacked fundamental understanding had become fundamental to explaining her apparent struggles. Torres completed his examination of the second row and moved toward the third, bringing him closer to Kira's position while maintaining the methodical approach that characterized his professional conduct. His reputation had been built through years of operations where attention to such details meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. The formation remained at rigid attention despite the nervous energy generated by Torres' presence and the knowledge that his assessment would carry lasting impact on individual military careers. The pressure of performing under observation by such distinguished authority created stress that separated those committed to military service from those seeking alternatives. Hassan observed Torres' progress with professional interest, his own experience allowing him to appreciate the commander's inspection technique, while noting how recruits responded to evaluation by someone of his stature. The visit provided opportunities to demonstrate training company development, while exposing areas requiring continued attention. Bet she wishes she never came here. Davidson offered his analysis of her apparent discomfort, his interpretation reflecting assumptions about civilian background and preparation for military demands. The contrast between perceived civilian softness and military requirements provided framework for understanding individual struggles during training. Torres reached the fourth row, his inspection continuing with systematic thoroughness that had marked his progress through the formation. Kira could observe his technique as he moved closer, noting the way his attention captured details that others might overlook while maintaining professional bearing that commanded respect from every recruit. The weight of concealment had grown heavier throughout the day, the constant awareness of hidden significance creating pressure that competed with the need to maintain appearance of struggling with basic military requirements. The balance between revelation and anonymity required calculation that added complexity to every interaction. Morrison positioned himself to observe her reaction when Torres reached her position, his anticipation of entertaining failure reflecting weeks of accumulated evidence supporting his assessment of her inadequacy. The pattern of seeking validation through others' difficulties had become established social dynamics within the training company. Torres completed the fourth row and stepped toward the fifth, bringing him within sight of Kira's position while maintaining the professional demeanor that had marked every aspect of his military service. The moment of truth approached with each step he took in her direction, carrying the potential for discovery that could transform everything about her carefully maintained anonymity. The evening inspection continued with methodical precision, each recruit receiving attention that would determine their standing within the training company while providing assessment data that influenced progression toward graduation and fleet assignment. The systematic nature of evaluation ensured equal treatment while maintaining standards that separated acceptable from inadequate performance. Torres moved through the fifth row with deliberate precision, his inspection maintaining the same level of thoroughness that had characterized his evaluation of every recruit in the formation. The evening light cast different shadows across the courtyard, creating atmospheric conditions that tested each individual's ability to maintain military bearing under varying circumstances while demonstrating adaptability required for naval service. "This is it," Morrison whispered to Castellanos, his anticipation of Kira's inevitable breakdown under scrutiny from such distinguished authority, reflecting weeks of accumulated predictions about her inability to handle pressure. The entertainment value he found in her anticipated failure had become a source of bonding among recruits who sought validation through other struggles with military requirements. Kira felt perspiration forming beneath her uniform despite the evening's cooler temperature, the weight of concealment creating physical stress that competed with the mental calculation required to maintain her carefully constructed appearance of struggling competence. The tattoo beneath her regulation clothing seemed to pulse with significance as Torres approached her position through systematic progression. Torres completed his examination of the recruit immediately beside her, his attention focused on details that would affect the evening's overall assessment, while maintaining professional bearing that commanded respect from every member of the training company. The methodical nature of his approach ensured equal treatment, while demonstrating the thoroughness that had marked his distinguished military career. "She definitely gonna embarrass herself completely," Jenkins predicted with confidence based on 3 weeks of observing what he interpreted as clear evidence of her unsuitability for military service. His assessment reflected the general consensus that had formed among recruits who viewed her presence as proof of compromised standards that weakened their training company's overall quality. The moment arrived as Torres stepped directly in front of Kira's position, his presence filling her field of vision while his trained attention began the systematic examination that had marked every other recruit's evaluation. His eyes moved methodically from her cover to her collar, noting details with the precision that had been developed through years of operations where such thoroughness determined mission success. Torres' examination proceeded with professional efficiency, his assessment covering uniform compliance and military bearing with the same standards applied to every other member of the formation. When his attention reached her left shoulder, his systematic scan continued without initial indication that anything warranted special notice or additional scrutiny beyond regulation requirements. The inspection continued as Torres' eyes moved across the area where her uniform fabric lay smooth against her skin, his trained observation noting details that might escape less experienced assessors. For several seconds, his examination proceeded with the same methodical approach that had characterized every aspect of his evaluation process. Then Torres' gaze stopped. His eyes focused on a specific area of her left shoulder, where the fabric pulled slightly differently than regulation standards typically produced, creating a subtle irregularity that his trained attention had detected during systematic examination. The pause in his inspection rhythm was barely perceptible, but the change in his focus was unmistakable to anyone observing his technique. "What is he looking at?" Castellanos whispered to his neighbor, his curiosity aroused by the apparent break in Torres' inspection pattern that had proceeded with clockwork precision through every other recruit's evaluation. The deviation from established routine suggested something had captured the commander's attention beyond routine uniform compliance. Torres leaned forward slightly, his professional bearing maintained while his examination intensified on the area that had drawn his notice. The movement was subtle but unmistakable, indicating that as trained, I had detected something requiring closer scrutiny than standard inspection protocols typically demanded from routine evaluation processes. The formation remained at rigid attention despite the tension generated by Torres' prolonged focus on a single recruit, the unusual nature of his extended examination creating nervous energy that affected every member of the training company. The deviation from expected inspection rhythm suggested significance beyond routine assessment of military bearing. Kira maintained her position at attention, while internal alarms triggered responses developed through years of training in environments where discovery carried consequences far more serious than military embarrassment. The moment she had dreaded since arriving at the training facility was unfolding with the methodical inevitability that marked Torres' professional approach to everything. Hassan observed the commander's focused attention with professional curiosity, his own experience allowing him to recognize when routine inspection had discovered something warranting additional scrutiny. The extended examination suggested Torres had detected details that separated this recruit from the others he had evaluated with standard protocols. Something wrong with her uniform. Davidson offered his interpretation of Torres' prolonged attention, his assumption reflecting the general expectation that her appearance would reveal deficiencies requiring correction or criticism. The theory that she struggled with basic requirements had become so established that any unusual attention seemed to confirm predicted inadequacy. Torres maintained his focused examination while the seconds stretched into what felt like minutes for every observer, his professional demeanor revealing nothing about his assessment, while his attention remained concentrated on details that had captured his trained notice. The silence created tension that affected the entire formation. The evening shadows continued, shifting as Torres extended his inspection beyond the duration typical for routine evaluation, his focus suggesting discovery of something significant enough to warrant departure from established protocols. The atmospheric pressure created by his prolonged attention affected every recruit's ability to maintain composure. Morrison exchanged glances with nearby recruits, their silent communication reflecting shared anticipation of dramatic revelation that would validate weeks of predictions about her unsuitability for military service. The expectation that Torres' attention would expose fundamental problems had become accepted wisdom among skeptical observers. The inspection continued with Torres maintaining his concentrated focus on the area that had drawn his professional attention, his examination proceeding with thoroughness that suggested significance beyond routine uniform compliance. The extended duration created suspense that affected every member of the formation while maintaining the disciplined silence required during formal evaluation. Torres' expression remained neutral throughout his prolonged examination, his professional bearing revealing nothing about his assessment, while his attention stayed focused on details that had captured his trained observation. The methodical nature of his scrutiny suggested systematic evaluation of something requiring careful consideration before reaching conclusions about its significance. Torres' attention remained fixed on the subtle irregularity beneath Kira's uniform fabric, his trained eye detecting the outline of something that regulation clothing was not designed to conceal. The systematic examination that had characterized his inspection of 31 other recruits had transformed into focused scrutiny that suggested discovery of significance beyond routine evaluation protocols. "What did he find?" whispered Patterson from the adjacent row, his curiosity reflecting the nervous energy that had spread throughout the formation as Torres' inspection extended far beyond normal duration. The deviation from established routine created tension that affected every recruit's ability to maintain military bearing, while speculation mounted about the nature of his discovery. The silence stretched across the courtyard as Torres continued his examination, his professional demeanor revealing nothing about his assessment, while his concentrated attention remained focused on details that had captured his notice. The evening light continued shifting, but his position remained constant as he evaluated whatever had drawn his trained observation beyond standard inspection requirements. "She's definitely hiding something major," Jenkins concluded with growing excitement, his assessment reflecting the anticipation that had built among recruits who viewed Torres' prolonged attention as confirmation of their suspicions about her background and qualifications. The theory that she had misrepresented fundamental aspects of her identity had gained credibility through this unexpected development. Torres reached toward her shoulder with controlled movement, his action deliberate and professional, while maintaining the bearing that marked every aspect of his military conduct. The gesture indicated intention to investigate the irregularity his examination had detected, moving beyond visual assessment toward physical confirmation of his observations. "Recruit Thorne," Torres said quietly, his voice carrying authority earned through years of commanding elite military operations while maintaining the professional tone appropriate for addressing subordinates. The use of her name focused attention on the interaction while indicating that his discovery warranted direct communication rather than silent notation. The formation held its collective breath as Torres addressed her directly, the unprecedented nature of his focused attention creating suspense that affected every member of the training company. Standard inspection protocols did not typically involve extended individual interaction, suggesting that his discovery carried significance beyond routine evaluation of uniform compliance. Kira maintained her position at attention, while internal calculations accelerated through scenarios she had prepared for throughout weeks of concealment. Her training providing frameworks for managing discovery, while her current circumstances demanded careful response to avoid compromising her carefully maintained anonymity among fellow recruits. "This is going to be good," Morrison muttered to Castellanos, his anticipation of dramatic revelation reflecting weeks of accumulated predictions about her inevitable exposure as fundamentally unsuited for military service. The entertainment value he found in her anticipated humiliation had intensified as Torres' attention suggested validation of every skeptical assessment. Torres' fingers moved with precise control toward the area that had captured his attention, his action indicating intention to confirm visual observations through tactile examination of whatever lay concealed beneath regulation fabric. The deliberate nature of his movement suggested professional assessment rather than casual curiosity about uniform irregularities. "May I examine your shoulder area?" Torres requested with professional courtesy that maintained appropriate boundaries while indicating his need to investigate the discovery that had interrupted standard inspection protocols. The formal nature of his request reflected military bearing while acknowledging her right to dignity during evaluation processes. The question hung in the evening air as every recruit strained to hear her response while maintaining the rigid attention required during formal inspection, their curiosity about the interaction competing with the need to avoid detection of their obvious interest in the unprecedented situation unfolding before them. Kira felt the weight of inevitable discovery settling over her as Torres' request created the moment she had both dreaded and anticipated since arriving at the training facility. The careful balance between concealment and military service finally reaching the tipping point that would transform everything about her carefully maintained position. "Yes, sir," she replied with steady voice that reflected years of training in maintaining composure under pressure, while her mind calculated the consequences of revelation that would expose the truth she had concealed from every member of the training company, including Chief Hassan and his instructional staff. Torres moved with professional precision as he carefully displaced the fabric of her uniform to reveal what lay beneath, his action deliberate and respectful, while exposing the small tattoo that had remained hidden throughout weeks of military training and evaluation. The design became visible in the evening light as regulation clothing no longer concealed its presence. The tattoo was simple but unmistakable to those who understood its significance. A small trident surrounded by crossed rifles with specific details that identified not just military service, but elite special operations background that separated its bearer from conventional military personnel. The design carried meaning that transformed understanding of her presence among basic training recruits. A collective intake of breath passed through nearby recruits as they observed the revealed tattoo, their recognition of its significance immediate despite their limited experience with special operations insignia. The symbol represented capabilities and achievements that contradicted every assumption they had formed about her background and qualifications during weeks of shared training. "Is that what I think it is?" Castellanos whispered in disbelief, his voice reflecting the shock that had spread through observers as they processed the implications of Torres' discovery. The revelation challenged fundamental assumptions about her identity while explaining inconsistencies in behavior that had puzzled fellow recruits throughout their time together. Torres' examination of the tattoo continued with professional thoroughness, his trained eye noting specific details that confirmed his initial assessment, while his expression remained controlled despite the significance of his discovery. The systematic approach he brought to evaluation extended to this unexpected revelation that had transformed routine inspection into something far more consequential. "Holy shit," Davidson breathed quietly, his profanity reflecting the magnitude of revelation that had overturned weeks of accumulated assumptions about her background and capabilities. The discovery that she possessed credentials that far exceeded anything they had imagined created cognitive dissonance that challenged their understanding of military hierarchy. The formation maintained discipline despite the revolutionary nature of Torres' discovery. 31 recruits processing information that contradicted everything they believed about their fellow trainee while maintaining the military bearing required during formal inspection, regardless of personal shock or confusion about revealed circumstances. Torres stepped back from his examination with visible recognition, transforming his professional demeanor, his eyes moving from the revealed tattoo to Kira's face as understanding dawned about the true identity of the recruit who had been dismissed and mocked by our training company for 3 weeks. The insignia he had uncovered represented achievements that placed her among the most elite military operators in existence. "That is a DevGru trident," Torres announced to the formation, his voice carrying across the courtyard with authority that commanded absolute attention from every recruit who had witnessed the revelation. The significance of his words hit like thunderbolts, revealing that the woman they had ridiculed possessed credentials from the Navy's most secretive and elite special operations unit. The silence that followed his announcement was absolute. 31 recruits processing information that shattered every assumption they had formed about their fellow trainee during weeks of shared training and accumulated mockery. The cognitive dissonance created by this revelation challenged their understanding of military hierarchy and their own positions within it. "DevGru," Torres continued, his explanation delivered with the gravity appropriate for discussing the most classified special operations unit in the naval service. "Development Group, the unit that doesn't officially exist. The operators who handle missions too sensitive for conventional special forces. The people who train other SEALs." Morrison felt his face drain of color as the implications crashed over him. His weeks of confident predictions and mocking commentary suddenly revealed as ignorant harassment of someone whose qualifications exceeded anything he had imagined possible. The betting pool he had organized now seemed like the juvenile behavior of children mocking their superiors. Kira maintained her position at attention while the weight of revealed identity settled over the formation. Her careful balance between concealment and military service finally abandoned as Torres' discovery exposed the truth she had hidden since arriving at the training facility. The relief of no longer maintaining false inadequacy mixed with concern about change dynamics. "How is that possible?" Castellanos whispered in disbelief, his voice reflecting the shock that had paralyzed his ability to process information that contradicted fundamental assumptions about qualifications and background. The woman he had dismissed as obviously unfit possessed credentials that placed her among the most elite military personnel in existence. Chief Hassan approached the interaction with growing understanding, his professional experience allowing him to recognize the significance of Torres' discovery while processing the implications for his assessment of Kira's performance during 3 weeks of training. The careful mediocrity she had demonstrated suddenly revealed itself as deliberately concealed capability. "Recruit Thorne," Torres addressed her directly, his tone shifting to reflect the respect appropriate for someone whose achievements commanded recognition even from distinguished special operations commanders. Or should I say, Operator Thorne, what brings someone of your caliber to basic recruit training? The question hung in the evening air as every member of the formation strained to hear her response, their curiosity about her motivation competing with growing awareness of how drastically their treatment of her would need to change based on this revelation. The power dynamics that had governed their interactions for weeks had been completely overturned. "I wanted to earn my place without the weight of expectations, sir," Kira replied with steady voice that reflected years of training in maintaining composure under scrutiny, while her explanation revealed the motivation behind weeks of carefully maintained anonymity among fellow recruits who had never suspected her true background. The simplicity of her answer carried profound implications about character and commitment that had driven someone with elite credentials to subject herself to the mockery and doubt of basic training rather than accept advancement based on reputation. The choice revealed dedication to proving herself through merit rather than recognition. Jenkins felt sick as he remembered every disparaging comment he had made about her capabilities, his confidence in her inevitable failure now revealed as ignorant assessment of someone whose qualifications far exceeded his own limited experience and understanding of military service. The entertainment he had found in her struggles was exposed as harassment of a superior. Torres nodded with visible respect for her explanation, his professional appreciation evident for the character that had motivated such a decision, while his assessment of her 3 weeks of performance revealed itself as masterful acting designed to maintain anonymity among peers who had never suspected the truth. Davidson stared in shock as he processed the revelation that every prediction of failure, every mocking comment, every assumption about her inadequacy had been directed towards someone whose achievements placed her among the most capable military operators in the world. The cognitive dissonance created confusion about his own understanding of competence and qualification. The formation remained frozen in collective shock as the implications continued spreading through their consciousness. 31 recruits realizing that their treatment of her had been fundamentally inappropriate and their assessments completely wrong. The woman they had dismissed possessed capabilities that exceeded their comprehension. Hassan began understanding the careful balance she had maintained during training exercises, her deliberate mediocrity now revealed as precise calculation designed to meet minimum standards without exposing capabilities that would have immediately identified her background. The skill required for such sustained deception demonstrated abilities beyond conventional military training. "She could probably kill all of us without breaking a sweat," Patterson whispered in awe, his assessment reflecting growing awareness of the gulf between her actual capabilities and the struggling recruit image she had maintained throughout weeks of shared training. The revelation transformed understanding of every interaction they had shared. Torres continued his examination of the tattoo with professional interest, noting details that confirmed not just DevGru affiliation, but specific operational experience that marked her as someone whose service record would remain classified long after her military career ended. The insignia represented achievements that few would ever know about or understand. Morrison realized that every aspect of her behavior during training had been carefully managed performance designed to conceal capabilities while meeting requirements. Her apparent struggles revealed as sophisticated acting that had fooled experienced instructors and fellow recruits for 3 weeks. The precision required for such deception demonstrated skills beyond their understanding. The evening light continued changing as the formation processed revelation that had transformed their understanding of military service and their own positions within it. 31 recruits facing the reality that they had been training alongside someone whose qualifications exceeded those of their instructors. The hierarchy they thought they understood had been completely inverted. Torres adjusted Kira's uniform fabric to properly conceal the tattoo once again, his action performed with the respect appropriate for someone whose service record commanded recognition from the highest levels of military command. The simple gesture marked the end of revelation, while acknowledging that her choice to maintain anonymity deserved continued protection from unwanted attention. I believe this training company has learned something valuable today. Torres addressed the formation, his words carrying weight that would influence every future interaction among the 32 recruits who had witnessed the evening's transformative discovery. The lesson extended far beyond uniform inspection into fundamental questions about judgment and assumption. The silence that had gripped the formation began breaking as individual recruits processed the full implications of what they had learned about their fellow trainee. Their previous confidence in their assessments now revealed as ignorant presumption about someone whose qualifications exceeded their comprehension. The cognitive adjustment required time that stretched into minutes. Morrison stepped forward with visible effort, his movement breaking protocol as he addressed Kira directly despite the formal inspection environment. "Ma'am, I owe you an apology." His words carried genuine remorse for weeks of mockery directed toward someone whose service had earned respect he was only beginning to understand. The unprecedented nature of his action created tension throughout the formation as other recruits recognized their own need to acknowledge behavior that had been fundamentally inappropriate toward someone whose achievements placed her among the most elite military operators in existence. The social dynamics that had governed their interactions for weeks required complete reconstruction. Kira maintained her military bearing while accepting Morrison's apology with grace that reflected the professionalism she had concealed beneath weeks of carefully managed performance. "I chose this path to prove myself among peers," she replied. "Your doubt provided the exact test I needed to demonstrate capability through merit rather than reputation." Her response revealed the strategic thinking that had motivated her decision to subject herself to mockery and dismissal rather than accept advancement based on credentials, transforming their treatment of her from harassment into unwitting participation in her chosen evaluation process. The revelation added another layer of respect for her character and commitment. Castellanos followed Morrison's example, stepping forward to offer his own apology while struggling to process how completely wrong his assessments had been throughout 3 weeks of shared training. The woman he had dismissed as obviously unfit possessed qualifications that exceeded those of every instructor at the facility. Chief Hassan approached with visible transformation in his demeanor, his professional bearing now reflecting awareness of Kira's true background, while his understanding of her training performance revealed itself as masterful deception that had fooled experienced military personnel. The skill required for such sustained acting demonstrated capabilities beyond conventional training. "Operator Thorne," Hassan addressed her with appropriate respect, his use of her correct title acknowledging the hierarchy that her revelation had exposed. "Your performance during training has been exemplary in ways I'm only now beginning to understand. The evaluation techniques you employed required precision that few could achieve." Jenkins joined the growing group of recruits offering apologies, his awareness of every disparaging comment and prediction of failure now creating genuine embarrassment about his treatment of someone whose service record would remain classified long after his own military career ended. The entertainment he had found in her apparent struggles was revealed as harassment of a superior. Torres observed the transformation with professional satisfaction, his inspection having revealed not just hidden identity, but providing education about assumptions and judgment that would influence these recruits throughout their military careers. The lesson extended beyond individual circumstances into fundamental principles of leadership and respect. Davidson approached with visible nervousness as he prepared to acknowledge his participation in the collective mockery that had characterized their treatment of her for 3 weeks, his confidence in his assessments, now revealed as ignorant presumption about qualifications and background that exceeded his experience and understanding. The formation gradually transformed from rigid military bearing into informal gathering as recruits individually recognized their need to acknowledge behavior that had been inappropriate towards someone whose achievements commanded respect from the highest levels of Special Operations Command. The social reconstruction required genuine effort from everyone involved. Before this story concludes, if you connected with this tale of hidden strength and earned respect, drop a comment about what resonated most with you, or share if you've witnessed similar courage in real life, where someone proved their doubters completely wrong. Patterson stepped forward to offer his apology while processing the revelation that every assumption he had formed about military capability and qualifications had been fundamentally challenged by someone whose presence among basic recruits had been motivated by character rather than necessity. The choice to prove herself through merit commanded respect he was learning to express. Kira accepted each apology with the professionalism that had marked her actual service, while acknowledging that their doubt had provided exactly the test she had sought when choosing to conceal her background among peers who would evaluate her performance without bias created by reputation or expectations based on credentials. Torres prepared to conclude the inspection that had transformed from routine evaluation into education about judgment and assumption. His discovery having provided lessons that would influence these recruits throughout their military careers, while demonstrating the danger of underestimating others based on appearance or initial performance. The evening shadows continued shifting across the courtyard as 32 recruits processed revelation that had challenged fundamental assumptions about capability and qualification. Their understanding of military service expanded through exposure to someone whose commitment had motivated choices that few would have considered necessary or worthwhile. Chief Hassan documented the inspection results with new understanding of Kira's careful performance throughout 3 weeks of training. Her deliberate mediocrity, now revealed as sophisticated deception designed to maintain anonymity while meeting requirements sufficient to continue progression through phases leading toward graduation. The formation gradually returned to military bearing as Torres concluded the inspection that had become education about respect and recognition. His discovery having transformed routine evaluation into demonstration of how assumptions about others could be fundamentally wrong regardless of confidence in those assessments. Morrison realized that the betting pool he had organized represented juvenile behavior directed towards someone whose qualifications exceeded anything he had imagined possible. The entertainment value he had found in her anticipated struggles now revealed as harassment of someone whose service commanded recognition from elite Special Operations Command. The inspection concluded with every recruit having learned lessons about judgment and assumption that would influence their approach to leadership and evaluation throughout military careers that had been enriched through exposure to someone whose character had motivated extraordinary choices about proving capability through merit rather than reputation.